This woman was recognized throughout the Kingdom of Hungary as Erzsébet Báthory, a noblewoman of extraordinary fortune, heritage, and sway. Yet her legacy is not defined by her aristocratic status, but by the grim events that transpired within the cold, imposing walls of Čachtice Castle. How did a countess, descended from one of Central Europe's most influential dynasties of the 16th century, become a symbol of brutality? Born in 1560, Erzsébet Báthory was a member of the prestigious Báthory lineage, kin to monarchs, cardinals, and military leaders. She was exceptionally educated, spoke several languages, and was wed to Ferenc Nadasdy, a celebrated general known as the Black Knight of Hungary. After Ferenc's death in 1604, Elizabeth assumed command of extensive properties, but it was the events that followed that transformed rumors into infamy. Over several years, tales spread of young village girls who entered her service, only to vanish without a trace. Was she a merciless murderer, or the target of a political plot to confiscate her estates? The truth lies somewhere between documented evidence and centuries-old myth. But one fact is certain: Erzsébet Báthory was prosecuted not as a common criminal, but as a danger to the noble order, and her case set a chilling precedent in early modern European law: how victims were enticed and ensnared. To local peasants, an invitation to join Countess Báthory's household seemed a rare privilege. Young girls from nearby villages, typically aged 10 to 18, were recruited with promises of work as maids, attendants, or seamstresses. Some were even sent by hopeful families, seeking a better future for their daughters. However, what seemed like upward mobility often marked the start of a nightmare. The Báthory estate was tightly regulated. Once inside, these girls were cut off from the outside world. Letters went unanswered, visits were forbidden, and silence prevailed. Witnesses later recounted that loyal staff, including a confidant named Anna Darvulia, managed this process, carefully vetting entrants and ensuring few ever departed. Though the aristocracy was largely shielded from prosecution, suspicions grew as more families questioned the disappearances, eventually drawing the church's attention. In 1609, Lutheran minister István Magyari wrote directly to the king, urging an inquiry into what he described as unspeakable cruelty. The real terror began only after the doors were shut. Disturbing rituals and no escape. Among the most persistent and disturbing allegations linked to Erzsébet Báthory are those involving ritualistic bathing, described in testimonies as central to her punishments. These claims, whether fact or legend, have ensured her place in history as one of Europe's most infamous figures. According to trial documents and witness depositions from the 1611 inquiry, servants testified that Countess Báthory conducted violent acts in enclosed, tiled rooms, using warm water in ways that deviated sharply from ordinary hygiene practices. Over time, a myth emerged that she bathed in blood to retain her youth, a narrative that has fascinated writers for centuries. However, no trial records or aristocratic correspondence from her era explicitly confirm this specific act. The blood-bathing legend likely originated decades later through sensationalized retellings rather than first-hand accounts. What the official testimonies document is more methodical and chilling. Witnesses described bathing basins and restrained victims during sessions referred to as disciplinary measures. Under oath, some claimed Báthory maintained an unsettling composure during these acts, treating brutality as mundane. Whether ritualistic or punitive, the events within the castle walls left behind witnesses, some complicit, others traumatized. While the myth eclipses reality, the documented allegations alone paint a grim picture. These bathing-related accusations formed part of one of early modern Europe's most infamous noble investigations: brutal, freezing punishments, victims exposed to winter elements. Among the most severe charges were exposure tortures during Hungary's harsh winters, a fusion of deliberate cruelty and environmental exploitation. Witnesses alleged that young servants were forced outdoors in freezing temperatures, often stripped of adequate clothing for prolonged periods. At a castle situated in the frigid Little Carpathians, testimonies described victims doused with cold water beforehand to amplify suffering, a calculated use of nature as a weapon. Accounts came from household staff, including Ilona Joe, Báthory's close attendant. While modern scholars debate whether these narratives were exaggerated under coercion, the consistency across depositions lends credibility. The purported aim was to inflict agony through indirect means, avoiding direct confrontation. One record notes Báthory observed from a distance, calmly directing the punishments. Whether routine or sporadic, these acts reinforced her reputation as a noblewoman whose disciplinary methods crossed into sadism, trial revelations that rocked the nobility. When Erzsébet Báthory was arrested in December 1610, the subsequent inquiry exposed systemic brutality that destabilized Hungary's aristocracy. Testimonies detailed not only torture, but a culture of impunity shielded by noble privilege. The case became a landmark in legal history, revealing how power could mask atrocities until witnesses dared to speak. Over 300 witnesses and survivors were summoned during the inquiry, led by György Thurzó, the Palatine of Hungary. The testimonies collected were not only extensive, but astonishing in their consistency and detail. Servants, castle officials, and local villagers described a chilling pattern of behavior: beatings, forced starvation, confinement, and punishments executed with methodical precision. Several witnesses claimed to have discovered journals in which the Countess allegedly recorded victims' names, with some asserting the number exceeded 600. However, no such book was ever produced as evidence, and its existence remains one of the case's most contested elements. Under oath, servants confessed their roles in administering or concealing punishments. While many testimonies may have been influenced by fear or hopes of leniency, the accumulation of corroborating accounts naming specific victims, locations, and routines proved decisive for investigators. Yet Erzsébet Báthory herself was never formally tried. As a noblewoman, her status shielded her from public prosecution. Instead, she was confined to a bricked-off chamber within Čachtice Castle, where she remained under house arrest until her death in 1614. Her accomplices faced brutal executions. 2 servants had their fingers torn off with hot pincers before being burned alive, while another was beheaded. For Báthory, justice was political and discreet, a strategic containment, rather than legal reckoning. As Palatine Thurzó wrote to King Matthias in January 1611, "I caught her red-handed." This terse statement, preserved in court records, continues to echo through history. Friends, was Báthory a singular monster or a product of her era's systemic brutality? The answer likely lies in the shadows between aristocratic impunity and documented cruelty. The 289 surviving witness statements, though never tested in a trial against her, reveal patterns of violence that transcended individual pathology. Yet the timing of her arrest, coinciding with Habsburg efforts to control Transylvanian nobles and seize her wealth, suggests political motivations intertwined with genuine horror. Kindly share your thoughts about this mysterious noble woman in the comment box below. Thank you.